Well, welcome to this edition of Phoenix News exclusively here on Phoenix TV. And this news comes to you the morning after the ENL versus Elite League and skills competition evening at the Altrincham Ice Dome. And for those of you who weren't able to make it to that evening at the Dome, well, you missed an absolute treat. Every single person that was in the building, every player, the officials, everybody had a fun night. There were lots of smiles in the building, and it really was a really good evening's entertainment for everybody that turned up, and a huge thank you to everybody that did turn up. And for those of you, as I said, that weren't able to make it, well, you really did miss a treat. But never fear, this is very definitely something that will be on the calendar in future years for the Manchester Phoenix Ice Hockey Club. We had the game. We mixed the squads. We did advertise. We had a couple of ringers. Those ringers were that Simon Mangos played in goal in place of Scott Fankhauser. Scott Fankhauser played on the wing, and Simon Mangos did himself a great deal of credit with his performance between the pipes, even though his shorts, which were actually Scott Fankhauser's, kept slipping down. He was a bit like a circus clown, kept pulling his pants up, but he made some excellent stops. Scott Fankhauser, as a winger, scored 2 very impressive goals. Also on the night, Brett Cloutier scored twice, and all 4 goalies, because Ben Schofield, Adam Summerfield and Mark Law, who's the other ENL goalie, all got ice time during the 2 periods of 15 minutes play. They all got a period apiece, and they all made some excellent stops. Particularly Ben Schofield, it has to be said, who seemed in very determined fashion not to concede anything unless it was absolutely necessary. The game itself finished 5 apiece. As we said, Scott Fankhauser scored a brace, as did Brett Cloutier, and there was some great skill on show, and it's a tremendous effort. And actually, as the game went on, it started at a fairly relaxed pace, as you'd expect, because it was a no-contact exhibition style game. But once the juices began to flow, you could see the competitive spirit within the players, every single one of them from both squads, and the pace actually picked up right throughout the game. And referee James Ashton actually commented that he'd skated more in 30 minutes of exhibition hockey than he does in a normal game, when he is, of course, normally just a linesman. So, but even James said that he thoroughly enjoyed the evening, and he looked forward to more of them in Altrincham himself. So that's a great credit when the officials have a fun evening as well. After the game, we brought on the juniors, the under-10s and under-12s. They gave a little display and then went into a game of football on ice, which was really well received. Great entertainment. The kids playing football in skates. It was really very, very amusing and great fun for the kids. Every single one of them enjoyed it, as well as did the parents and, of course, their tutors, should we say, their coaches who were on the ice with them. They certainly did have a good workout as well before we resurfaced the ice, and then we went into the skills competition, which again brought out the competitive spirit within all the players who took part in the 5 demonstrations of skills that we put forward. We had the fastest slap shot, and that was won by Omar Enafati from Scott Fankhauser. Scott Fankhauser recorded 74 mile an hour with his slap shot. Omar bettered him by 3 miles an hour, 77 mile an hour from Omar, but great credit on Scott Fankhauser. Bearing in mind, he is a goalie after all, but he showed that he can shoot the puck, and 74 mile an hour is no mean feat at all. In the fastest wrist shot, well, that was won by Brett Cloutier, 72 miles an hour. Brett Cloutier recorded. Excellent effort from the big man, who'd only just got back from Dublin and was still feeling just a little bit worse to wear from his St Patrick's Day shenanigans over with his dad in the Emerald Isle. But 72 mile an hour, no mean feat at all. The fastest skater, well, the guys went round the ice in a race off against guys from their own team. Joe Talari was the fastest player from the Elite League squad. Danny Binns was the fastest player from the ENL squad. They raced off against each other. Danny Binns won that race, but it has to be said that Joe did compete in the final immediately, having taken place in his semi-final. So all credit to Danny Binns for keeping going, but I think if it had been a really level race, Joe would probably have nicked it in the end. But all the players who took part in that thoroughly enjoyed that as well. Target shooting, what we did there was we hung 5 paper plates in the goal, 1 each in the top corners, 1 each in the bottom corner, and 1 slap bang in the middle. And Well, to be fair, there was some wayward shooting on the target shoot, it has to be said. But Scott Bazic, captain of the Phoenix Elite League squad, he won that by hitting 3 out of 5 when he stepped forward to take his shots at the paper plates. And finally, in the penalty shootout, well, that was won by Nick Wyatt. And Nick Wyatt scored a couple of excellent goals on his penalty shots against Ben Schofield. And it really was good fun indeed. And I guess nobody would have expected Nick to win it, but he took it seriously and he was delighted. The look on his face when we announced that he'd won it, he was absolutely delighted to have upstaged some of his more experienced and, shall we say, more skillful players in the penalty shootout. But a great night, as we said. Everybody in the crowd enjoyed it. All the players enjoyed it. And when you get a comment from the referee as well that he thoroughly enjoyed it, well, that just about topped it off. A great evening, a good fundraiser for the club and also for the junior club as well. Once we paid the costs out for the rent of the ice, etc., it was a good night for the club. So again, once again, a massive thank you to everybody who turned up on Tuesday night. And also we'd like to say a huge thank you to the people at Greater Manchester Police for the loan of the speed camera that allowed us to judge the speed of the wrist shots and slap shots. Jim Piper, who works for GMP, managed to secure the loan of the speed gun, and he was the volunteer who sat behind the goal on the carpet to use the camera and record the speed. And once again, a massive thanks to Greater Manchester Police for the loan of that very, very expensive and delicate equipment. Marvellous from the police to help us out with that. Now, let's look forward to the games for the Manchester Phoenix coming up. This weekend we travel to Nottingham on Saturday and Hull on Sunday. None of the games this weekend involving the Phoenix, or for that matter the Panthers or the Stingrays, will have any further effect on the BMI Baby Elite League table. The Panthers are fixed in 3rd, we're fixed in 7th, and disappointingly for the Hull Stingrays' point of view, they're rooted to the bottom in 10th place. But that doesn't mean that there won't be anything on the games, because obviously the Panthers and Phoenix are preparing for the playoffs, so there'll be professional pride, going into that game. The Hull Stingrays will want to go out with a flourish in front of their final set of home fans on Sunday night. So there will still be edge to both these games for all the teams involved. The big thing for the Phoenix, though, is to try and stay fit, healthy, and most of all, injury-free ahead of those playoff games against Sheffield. More of those in a minute. The game on Saturday in Nottingham is a 7 o'clock face-off in the National Ice Centre. If you're unable to make it across to Nottingham, well, it is a Sky TV game, so you'll be able to watch that probably on Tuesday. And face-off on Sunday in Hull is 5:30. And 5:30 in Hull. And if you're going across to Hull, that's always a good atmosphere in Hull. Always a lot of Phoenix fans travel over.